arrays, which are accessible via buff, to read and write raw bytes at the location where the stale property thinks a standard JavaScript object is. So first we have to find if and how the buff and the stale array overlap. To do this, we can simply add a number to the first element of stale. But what is the first element of stale now? Isn't that garbage memory? Well, ideally, if everything works, it points where we created the uint32 arrays and we populated that memory region with hex FFFF000 for 1 for 1 for 1 for 1, which is a JS value representing an integer, in fact the number for 1 for 1 for 1 for 1. This means now we add hex 101 to the first element of the stale array, making it the integer for 1 for 1 for 2 for 2. We can now simply search through the whole uint32 array memory buff looking for this for 1 for 1 for 2 for 2. Keep in mind that the buff has access to raw bytes, so it will also see the FFFF00 and the for 1 for 1 for 1. While the stale array thinks this is a JavaScript object and only uses FFF0 internally to determine that we have an integer and the value of it is for 1 for 1 for 1 for 1. So what can we do with this now? This is where exploitation really becomes creative. The Frag article says that once you have the ability to craft arbitrary JavaScript objects, you could craft a float64 array to create a read-write primitive. But QWERTY used a uint32 array. To quote him, here is his reason. It's easier than float to do math with, lol. And I guess he has a point. Floating point values in raw bytes are really annoying. So first of all, why do we want to craft the uint32 array? If you remember the basic structure of a uint32 array, it uses a vector to point to some raw memory. If you control where this memory points to, you can control where you can read data from and write data to, because it thinks it points to the actual array. There's a super clever way how to craft this array now. QWERTY creates a new object with 4 properties, A, B, C, D. He probably just took that from the Frag article, because when you look at how the simple object with only 4 properties is stored, it stores the values in line. This is very helpful in a second. As you see, the values set, like the hex 137, are simply placed here in memory after each other. So that's a very neat way to control a couple of consecutive values in memory. The two 64-bit values are the JS cell and the butterfly pointer. The JS cell, or more specifically the structure ID inside of the JS cell, determines what this JavaScript object actually is. In the Frag article, it looks like the object ID here has 136. So in order to craft a uint32 array, we would have to know the structure ID of that. According to the Frag article, this ID can change sometimes, maybe at restart or between different WebKit builds. But apparently it's very common to be 105. Nonetheless, because my exploit was very unstable, I tried to see if the value is maybe different, and the Frag article shows a technique how to do that. Back to the new object for a second. This will allocate a new object with 4 properties that look like this in memory. Hex 69, or in decimal 105, then 0, the pointer to the smash array, which we allocated way at the beginning, and hex 100. The function u2d is a clever little helper. As every number in JavaScript is basically a float, we can create a new data view of 16 bytes, so 64-bit, set the high and the low 32 bits, and return the float representation of those bytes. This new object creation will also override stale 0. Just a few seconds ago I mentioned that stale 0 points to a JS value representing a number, but now it was all written with a JS value representing a pointer to the JS object that was just created. This JS object it points to is not very interesting for us. It's not an arbitrary object we have crafted. But remember that the JS value with the pointer to this object is in the memory that is overlapped by the buff. This means we can use buff to manipulate the pointer. And what we do is we add hex 10 or decimal 16, which moves the pointer into the properties of the JS object. Now suddenly the hex X9 is the JS cell value.
ポカポカして気持ちいいね。夢か。ついついね。
いけた。この男には我が名はよし。